We are not even close. All right, so trying to find where I left off. Why can't we just be human? I would ask my parents, and that's how I heard about so many stories of how they grew up and their lives before they left the South and after that. There was no escape from racism. There is no escape from racism. And there is no rest. We don't get time out, people of color. We don't get to say, let's take a break. I'm gonna end, I only have a couple sentences on that, my reply to him, so I'm just gonna end that. But I was speaking at a school before COVID, and they wanted me to come to the school for Black History Month. So I went to the school, and actually I couldn't get booked until like just the day after it ended or something like that. It was like a day or two after. So anyway, I went and talked to the kids. They were learning about Black history. They were learning about slavery. They were learning about civil rights and things of that nature. So they wanted me to come and speak to them about Black History Month. So I have this photo on my Facebook and I'm doing this, like time out. Because somewhere along the lines I had made a joke, and it's not a joke, but it's true. But I had made a joke to the classroom. I said, I'm Black, I don't get to call time out for racism. I said, I can't say time out, bro. That's too racist. So the kids laughed. It's really not funny, but they laughed. And it was a few, could have been close to, it was over 100 of them. And so then we all pose for a picture like this. But that's what that's about. We don't get to call time out. I don't get to take a break from racism. So another thing happened in that class, one girl stood up and she said she had, I guess she played on the soccer team, and she had a girl on the soccer team that was her friend, and they took a road trip. And they stopped at I want to say a truck stop, but I think it was more like a gas station, big store kind of truck stop thing. So they stopped there, and the Black girl was there, and she said all of these 40-year-old men. Now this girl, she's I'm trying to think of her age. She's probably 14 or 15 now. And this happened a couple years ago, so she must have been 13 or something. So these are 13 early teenage girls, early adolescent, pretty much, 13 years old. They're walking across the parking lot, trying to go in the store to get some drinks and Skittles and potato chips and popcorn or whatever. And she said this group of 40-year-old men started talking about the Black girl and started calling her a nigger. And they was nigger this and nigger that about a 13-year-old girl walking across a parking lot. I wasn't even there. She was telling me the story, and I was infuriated. Not only are you a racist, but you're a bully too. And you're a 40-year-old bully bullying a teenage girl? And she said it went on and on until the teachers were I guess the coaches were trying to diffuse it. And I think, it kind of escalated to the point where, they almost got into a fight, the coaches. So I'm glad the coaches stood up. But just imagine that. Can you imagine your child? Take the Blackness out of it. Take the Blackness out of it. Who has children? Who's ever been 13? Can you imagine a pod of 40-year-olds hanging out in earshot of you, and just saying the most heinous crap they can say about you. It's just unbelievable. But it's racism. We're gonna stick to the topic of racism. But she told us that. And as she was telling us that, she started crying. She started crying. And she's a white girl, but she could understand, she could empathize to what her friend was feeling as she was telling us that story. Then some other kids shared some other stories as well. But it was a remarkable time, to spend with those children and talk to them about racism. We're here today because the spark that George Floyd set off by saying, once again, I can't breathe. This is painful to me. When I think about what happened to that man and what happened to Eric Garner, what happened to Breonna Taylor, what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, even though Trayvon Martin's murderer, wasn't a police officer, what happened to him? He was a teenage boy, got murdered, coming back home from buying Skittles and iced tea. And now his killer is a millionaire. Not only did he get acquitted, but he's a millionaire as a result of murdering a teenage black boy. I'm gonna read you a list of names, and this is not all inclusive of everybody who's experienced. These are police murder victims, I'll put it that way. I said this before, and Kylie was, when we had a speech before, that I do not allocate police brutality to anybody who is deceased, who died in the hands of police custody. That is police murder. That is not police brutality. Police brutality applies to those survivors, those who lived through police brutality. One moment. I'm going to read these in a different order. May 21st, 1999. Margaret Laverne Mitchell, 54 years old. Mitchell, who suffered from mental illness, was shot to death. In Los Angeles, the homeless woman reportedly lunged at an officer with a screwdriver after two officers stopped her while she pushed a shopping cart on La Brea Avenue. Some witnesses dispute statements that Mitchell lunged at one of the officers. Now let me tell you about La Brea Avenue. In my living room, I have a photograph that I've taken, because I do photography sometimes. And I took, that photograph is a branch from a juniper tree. And the location of that juniper tree, of that photograph that hangs in my living room, is La Brea. So when I look at that picture, I remember the anti-Black sentiments in the death of Margaret Laverne Mitchell. I learned of her death after I took the picture, but now when I look at the picture, I see something different. There's not even complete peace and freedom of racism in my own home. Latanya Haggerty, 26 years old. Haggerty was a passenger in a car that was pulled over by Chicago police on June 4th, 1999. An officer shot Haggerty, thinking she was holding a gun, but Haggerty, who was talking on her cell phone, was unarmed. So the police shot Haggerty as she climbed into the driver's side after the driver was pulled out of the car and arrested. So what do you do if you're sitting in the car and you have a driver's license to drive the car now, but the driver has been taken into custody and taken out of the car? Somebody needs to drive the car home, right? Aren't you naturally going to climb into the driver's seat, get into the driver's seat, and drive the car home? She climbed in that passenger seat, which was her right to do. It ended her life. "26 years old. Amadou Diallo, 22 years old. Kendra James, 21 years old. James was shot in the head by a police officer in Portland, Oregon on May 5th, 2003, after the car in which she was a passenger was pulled over. A police said he fired in self-defense during a struggle with James. Ronald Madison, 40 years old. Sean Bell, 23 years old. Manuel Loggins Jr., 31 years old. Loggins was a Marine sergeant and father of 3 when he was killed by an Orange County Sheriff deputy on February 7th, 2012. The deputy approached Loggins after he crashed through a gate of San Clemente High School about 4:30 a.m. in the morning with 2 of his daughters inside his SUV. According to the sheriff's department, Loggins left the vehicle, then returned to it, ignored orders to show his hands, and displayed a mean expression. The sheriff deputy, who said he feared for the girls' safety, fired 3 shots through the window, killing Loggins and his daughters, 9 and 14 years old. Oh no, I'm sorry, I misread that. Fired 3 shots through the window, killing Loggins as his daughters, 9 and 14 years old, watched.